Let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come, unless the apostasy comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of perdition. Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Rogers, and I'm the minister at the Hickory Street Church of Christ in Arcadia, Florida. We have Bible classes every Sunday and every Wednesday, and our times are listed on our website, christiansinarcadia.org. I'll put it in the description below. I'm standing in this week for Dr. Don K. Preston of the Preterist Research Institute in Ardmore, Oklahoma. He wasn't able to make videos every day this week, and so he asked me to fill in for him for the whole week. And so we have this awesome opportunity to talk about the man of sin from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 2. Today what we're going to specifically talk about is the apostasy, or the apostasia, as it says in the Greek. We're going to identify what this apostasy was, and I'm going to give you some suggestions and some supplementary evidence as to what this apostasy was. Now, the word apostasy in the Greek does not always mean religious apostasy. When we think about apostasy, we think, so-and-so, they've gone off into apostasy. We need to bring them back to the one true faith. Well, this isn't always what the word means. The word primarily means revolt. And it can be religious revolt or religious falling away, but it can also mean political revolt or a national revolt or national falling away. In fact, we have many cases in the first century of apostasy. We have many cases of revolt from various Jewish individuals. In Acts chapter 5, for instance, we have Gamaliel identifying two of those. One man named Judas of Galilee and another man, Theudas. And both of these individuals led people after them. They were eventually killed, and their revolt sort of fizzled out. Now what Gamaliel says is, these Christians, you think that they're going to cause us a problem, but their leader has died. Jesus has died, and so their movement will fizzle out unless it's from God. Now see, the Jewish leaders had a major problem with the zealots. They were so afraid that Rome would come and take away their place in their nation. This is the exact response they had in John chapter 11 to what occurred there with the raising of Lazarus. They thought, truly this man does all these signs, and all these individuals are going to follow after him now more than ever. What are we going to do? Rome is going to come take away our place in our nation. They wanted to put down any revolt that they could. And so when they bring Jesus before the courts in the latter portion of the Gospels, they go as far as to say, we have no king but Caesar. They go as far as to reject Jesus as their king and to claim that Caesar is their one and only king. They're doing all they can to stay on the good side of the Romans. You see, the Jewish elite were smart. They realized that they had no chance to fight against Rome. They realized that Rome would squash them like a bug, okay? But the zealots, on the other hand, the zealots wanted to revolt. The zealots wanted to go take back their pride. They wanted to restore the kingdom to Israel in the way that they thought it should be restored, and not in the way that Jesus said that it would be. You see, Jesus had warned his own apostles several times not to get involved in things like this. He said, if you take up the sword, you're going to die by the sword. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were of this world, my servants would fight, but my kingdom is not from hence. He made it plain that he was not leading some type of revolt. He was not a zealot. He was not this military leader that they had hoped for. Instead, he was a spiritual leader, establishing a spiritual kingdom that's not involved in war like this. Isaiah describes turning your tools usually used for war into tools used for farming, into peaceful things, and not things of violence and destruction. When we come to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, then, this is what I suggest is taking place here. Paul is saying that the day of the Lord will not come until a political revolt takes place. And he's specifically referring to, in my estimation at least, the zealots revolting against Rome in the 60s. Now, this mystery of lawlessness, as he calls it, was already taking place. There had already been several attempts at a revolt in the past that had been put down. Okay, there had already been many people rising up and saying, we need to do something about this Rome. And they eventually were silenced But that voice was getting louder and louder and louder as the years progressed. It was looming on the horizon. Now that which was restraining, I've already hinted at it here. I'm going to go into more details on that on Thursday. They were trying to keep the revolts down. They were trying to keep the Jews calm because they did not want to progress into this civil unrest that was about to take place. And so Paul warns about this apostasy. In fact, let me read to you a passage from Josephus. This is on page 130 of my book, Paul's Letters to the Thessalonians. By the way, I mentioned this yesterday. You can get this book for free for eSword. If you have the eSword program on your computer, all you have to do is go to my website, labornotinvain.com. You need to click on the word shop or LNIV store there and go and look under. You don't have to buy the thing, okay, but in the description of it, there's a link. You click on the link, you download the eSword file, and you move it over into the C drive on your computer, all right? And I can teach you how to do that if you message me. But here's a quote from this book. This is from Josephus. Those men made the temple of God a stronghold for them, talking about the zealots, and a place whither they might resort. In order to avoid the troubles they feared from the people, the sanctuary was now become a refuge and a shop of tyranny. Now this is Josephus talking about the zealots towards the end of the first century, rather towards the end of that first generation. They had gathered into the temple and made it their refuge. The temple had become, so to speak, a den of thieves and a dwelling place of robbers. And so here in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, Paul describes this revolt as taking up space in the temple, as he talks about in verse 4. They would take their seat in the temple of God. And this man of sin, someone we're going to work hard to identify tomorrow, would be sort of the face of this revolt. And again, we'll work on that tomorrow. I know some of you may be excited about getting to that point specifically. Okay, so we have this revolt that's going to take place prior to the coming of the Lord. And the only thing that's going to put this down is judgment from God. Now, in the book of Acts, Paul is reasoning with the leaders about righteousness and things like this and judgment about to come. In Acts chapter 24 and verse 25, the scripture says this in the Young's Literal Translation, for instance. And he was reasoning concerning righteousness and temperance and the judgment that is about to be. Felix, having become afraid, answered, "For the present be going, and having got time, I'll call for thee." So basically we have here Felix being upset at what Paul says and says, "Okay, I'll call you when I need you." But notice that Felix trembles at this idea of the judgment that was about to come. Why was Felix trembling? Because this judgment that was about to come would involve this huge civil upheaval, a huge revolt from the Jews that will bring disasters all across the empire and not just in Judea. It was going to bring dangers and calamities that hadn't been seen in the world ever, and never would be seen again. Matthew chapter 24 and verse 21. It was going to bring armies and desolations and destruction and death and misery. And this caused Felix to tremble whenever Paul revealed this information to him. The mystery of lawlessness was already at work, and it could already be seen in the first century. The Jewish elite were working hard to restrain this by putting individuals to death, by having them put to death, by telling on them to the Romans, and by discouraging this type of activity. But it would not hold for long. The barrier wall would be broken, and the man of sin, the son of perdition, would be revealed, and the Jews' worst nightmare would come true. Listen, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your attention and your kindness, and I hope that the videos I'll be putting on YouTube later this week will also be helpful to you. Hope you have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.